Mayor Suarez.
Yes.
What a pleasure.
Good to be with you. Thank
to
you.
finally meet in person.
Yes.
I know we've been trying to do this for quite some time. I
Yeah.
tried reaching out during your presidential campaign, but conflict of schedule. So
Yeah.
I'm just really happy to meet you.
Oh, it's good to meet you too.
Yes, I feel like you are the most popular mayor in America.
Thank you.
Would you say that's true?
You know, I'll tell you this. I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I think what we've done in Miami
Yeah.
is really special.
Right.
Right. And so I think popularity comes, I hope, from success.
Yes.
And I think our sort of success story is a really beautiful American story. It's a
Right.
pro-America story.
Yeah.
Right. It's a story where our parents came to this country legally, you know, at 12 and 7 from Cuba. You know, unfortunately, there they were defrauded into believing that government is the answer to all problems, when we all know that that's not true.
Yeah.
Right. And so you had a leader there that said, give us all your property, give us all your business. Don't worry, we'll make everybody equal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
He made everybody equally miserable and everybody equally
poor.
That's right.
I've been to Cuba myself.
Yeah.
I went on actually like a humanitarian trip back in 2018, taking a bunch of stuff, medicine, toiletries, everything you can think of. And I think it was one of the saddest experiences. It's really unfortunate that there's people that go there and kind of like prop up the city when it's really run down and just overall really sad. So,
I mean, you have to understand that people risk their life to come here.
Yeah.
You know, they get on these
To drown.
Yeah, these makeshift rafts without propulsion, without any sort of engine, and try to navigate 90 miles. So think about how desperate you have to be
of course.
to do something like that. And then you come to a country like ours, and our country is radically different, right? It's a country that says if you work hard, if you study, if you play by the rules,
Right. You'll succeed.
you have a great chance to be successful. And so I think Miami has embodied that. You know,
Yeah.
I say, people ask me, what's your secret? I said, it's really simple. We do three things, and we do three things well. We keep taxes low,
Yeah.
we keep people safe, and we lean into innovation.
Safety,
So
right.
we create prosperity, right?
Yeah.
Through our ecosystem build. And you know, look, we've kept people safe. We started recording homicides in 1947.
Right.
We had a third of the population we have today. And in 1947, we had more homicides than we had last year in 2023 with 3 times the population.
Well, and that's one of the things that I first wanted to ask you. Obviously, Miami, I think it's like the hottest city in America right now. Everybody wants to move here. We can barely even.
And everybody
find,
is moving
Everybody
here.
is moving here. I live in Edgewater, so I'm obviously one of your voters and
Love it.
contributed to your political
Thank
campaign.
you, boss. Thank you, boss.
And you know, I love living there, and I can, you know, there's so many people that are so happy being outside. I wanted to ask you, what do you think has contributed to the success of the city of Miami from what obviously you've done in the past couple of years?
I think we dare to be different. You know, you had a situation where during the pandemic, we were open when a lot of places were closed.
Right.
We were a hub for decentralized work where you could work from anywhere. And so people were working where they wanted to be instead of where they felt like they had to be.
Yeah.
And I think number 3 was our attitude. You had a situation where in New York, they win the Amazon HQ2 prize that they compete for, and then they say, and then AOC says no, thank you.
Yes.
And kicks
Oh,
out
that's right. I forgot about that.
50,000
Right.
high-paying jobs. And then in California at the same time, a legislator says F Elon Musk, and he replies, message received, and he leaves. Right.
Yeah.
So it turns out that people don't want to be a pariah in their own community if they're doing exceptional things. And when you think about the signal, right? What's the signal? What do we as public officials do? We create signals. The signal in New York was, if you're going to create $1 trillion company with high paying employees, we don't want you.
Yeah.
The signal in California was, if you're going to be the wealthiest guy in the world and revolutionize, you know, space flight, telecommunications, cars, you know, tunneling, we don't want you.
Right.
And for us, at the same exact moment, there was a tweet that
The
said,
complete opposite.
yeah, it was, what if we move Silicon Valley to Miami? And I responded, how can I help?
Yes.
Meaning, how can it?
That went viral.
It went viral.
That was a viral tweet. I remember
was.
that.
And again, it was just me being us.
Welcoming.
Me being welcoming, but me being Miami. That's who we are, right?
Yeah,
We're a welcoming
we are.
community.
We are.
Right? You came from Colombia.
Yeah.
My parents came from Cuba. So, you know, my parents weren't born here. I was born here. I'm the first mayor born here. But I think it says a lot about our community that we, you know, accept people from everywhere. We help them feel welcome. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, which is to be successful.
And to be safe, right? Safety is so important.
Huge.
Do you think Miami is still the tech hub or of, you know, the USA? I know Austin was one, obviously San Francisco. How's that going? What do you think?
So, you know, it's being a tech hub and staying a tech hub is a process. Right, and so we, you know, I'm wearing my Bitcoin shoes.
Yeah,
you
I saw that.
had commented
Cool.
it off air. You know, it's a process and it's a fight, right? Because technology is evolving so quickly, and the ecosystem of technology is evolving so quickly. So during crypto, I think we were the dominant player, right?
Yep.
We're getting a ton of market share. Crypto starts to fizzle out a little bit. AI starts to take its place, and the shift starts going back to the valley. So we have to adapt, right? It's like you're in a fight, right? Like, or you're in a competition. Your competitor is one thing. You gotta pivot. You gotta do something else. So I think what's important about this moment, and I call it Miami 3.0. So if Miami 1.0 was when a guy like Manny Medina built the NAP and sold it for $1 billion to Verizon, and Miami 2.0 was the how can I help moment. The 3.0 moment is my generation and my children's generation saying, hey, we want to step into this knowledge-based economy, and we want to excel. And I think it's going to require us believing that we can do it, no matter where we came from, no matter what school we went to, and then understanding that it's hard work.
It is. It
is.
It
it's
is
hard work.
I also feel like the lifestyle in Miami invites a lot of people, like especially in Edgewater. I always see people outside. I see you working, obviously, in your videos, which are really cool. And it's just a much better lifestyle than New York, LA, and stuff like that. I always hear positive things, especially people moving here. They mention your name all the time. They say, you know, and I feel like we don't see that from other mayors across America. Like,
so we were ranked the happiest city in America and the healthiest city in America. And I think when you're trying to create an ecosystem where there's safety, people need to be happy, they need to be healthy. And then we have the lowest unemployment in America, so they're working. So when you got 1.4% unemployment, that means 98.6% of the people are working. So you got people working, they're happy, they're healthy, and guess what they're not doing? Committing violent crime. And so that's part of it. The other part of it is we're very pro-law enforcement community. Right? I don't understand why or how being in, you know, supporting law enforcement became controversial or became, you know,
the media, obviously.
No, we know where it comes from, right? But it should never have happened. And as Americans, it's fun, you know, being pro law and order, being pro law enforcement are things that are, to me, are fundamental American values.
That's the way we saw it in Colombia. You know, I come from a country where obviously very lawless, terrorists, cartels and stuff, and it's one of the reasons why we moved here. We actually had a very good life, but being able to be safe, walk around with my watch, with my iPhone.
It's number one.
I mean, you know, when I go back home, I can't put my AirPods on because I'm scared I'm going to get robbed.
That's crazy.
I walk around the Venetian, I do whatever in Edgewater. I don't feel that way. And I think our police are actually some of the best in the country.
They're fantastic.
We just saw them in downtown Miami, I think a few days ago. There were, I think there was a pro-Palestinian, some type of action going on, and they quickly got to it.
And I'll tell you it's something about that because I think it's an interesting thing about us, right? Number one is this was a national movement. You saw in every major city this happening, right? Except what's the difference? In Miami, number one, it was tiny. Because there aren't a lot of people that are pro-Palestine, right? People here, you know, we have a robust Jewish community. We understand that Israel is our most important ally in the region. And so there isn't a lot of people that are sympathetic to the Hamas, right? And then I think, which is a terrorist organization. And then I think number two is we have a zero tolerance policy. Even during the George Floyd, you know, protest, we have no problem with people protesting. We have no problem
exercising their First Amendment right.
Correct. In fact, that's another American value, right? Is having the right to say what you want to say. But you have to do it appropriately and in the appropriate fashion.
Without violence, without criminal activity.
Exactly. No, hurt anybody, you can't hurt people's business, and you can't hurt property, and you can't block streets, and you can't obstruct traffic, which is what they were doing across America. 7 people did it in our city, 7 people went to jail, and I think we sent a very clear message.
We shut it down real quick.
I think we sent a clear message as to what we tolerate and don't tolerate. And I think that message gets around. Right? I did national interviews the next day on Newsmax and on other stations. And it gets around, and I think a lot of those people are professional agitators.
Oh yeah, right? They're paid to come here and do that.
So obviously, when they realize that there's no opportunity, they go out to other places where they can be more productive.
Speaking of national politics, you ran for president last year, and I wanted to know, how did that go? What did you learn from that? What made you run, actually?
Well, look, I learned a tremendous amount from it. I mean, anytime you do something, whether it's successful or not successful, you learn a lot from it. I ran because, you know, the polls were showing that 70% of Americans wanted new options in 2024. That didn't turn out to be the case, right? They ended up with the same 2 options as 2020, and I've endorsed President Trump. And for me, it was, and this happened to me when I ran for mayor. I ran for mayor in 2013, unsuccessly against the incumbent, and then was elected by 85% the next election. And I think I'm always trying to push the envelope. I'm someone that's very, you know, ambitious in the sense that I care about my community and I want to see it rise to the challenge and thrive. Exactly, that's a great word. And so for me, I just I'm a little bit impatient, right, about like seeing that change happen.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be a mover of that change as
Yeah.
opposed to a passive, you know what I mean, participant in that. And so that was, you know, I think you can only control yourself and your destiny, right? Like that's the only way to do it. So for me, instead of like complaining about a problem, I said, you know what, I want to be part of the solution. And you know what, even if I don't win, I want to be part of the conversation. And I think it's also, to me, it also meant being the first Miami-born mayor. It meant something.
And the first Latino that was running as well, right?
Yeah, as a sense of pride, right? Of like, this is our community's way of breaking through some of these traditional structures that have always held us down, right? Mayors, it's been like a glass ceiling. And so for me, that was a big part of it too. And I learned a lot from it. I think, you know, this election will be defined by what we see as what we want to see in the future, right? And I think you got to take out the noise. The noise is, even if you take out the fact that, you know, a lot of people believe that the current president is incompetent and incapable, right, and incoherent. And the former president is someone that the people that don't like him don't like his personality. Let's take that out of the equation. Let's look at the record.
And let's look at policy as well, which is what matters.
100%. The border was a lot more secure under President Trump than under President Biden. We have 7 million plus illegal immigrants, which is more than the population of 37 states. We have 70,000 people dying of fentanyl on an annual basis. That's like a 747 crashing every single day. If that were to be happening in the U.S. on any given day, they would stop all air traffic control and they would fix the problem. Then you go to the Middle East, right? You have a conventional war in the Middle East that's now, looks like it could get worse, right? I hope it doesn't, but you got Iran now directly attacking Israel.
The Ukrainian-Russian war as well.
None of that happened during President Trump's. On the contrary, we had the Abraham Accords, so you were forging peace.
He was the president of peace.
So, you know, people, you know, they like to get distracted about his personality and the this and then that, but you got to look at the results. And then economically, he lowered taxes, right? He had tremendous economic growth prior to the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic was, but you've seen massive inflation under this president. So
it's bad.
And that means the poor get poorer. Right. And the Democrats are supposed to care supposedly about the most vulnerable, and frankly, their policies don't seem to actually cater to
reflect that. Right.
Exactly.
So what made you like support President Trump? I know in the past you hadn't.
Right.
But you know, this was bold in my opinion. Obviously, I'm a Trump supporter, and you know, I think this city is now a red since 2022. DeSantis turning the city red. So what made you do that?
I think it was three things. I think one of them was what I just described, these sort of policy differences that to me, when you take out all the distractions, I think number two is I got to know him personally.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who, I feel more comfortable when I know somebody on a personal level. I find him to be engaging. You know, he's someone who has a magnetic personality, charismatic and all that stuff. And number three, I've seen the witch hunts that I've seen in my own personal life, and it contextualizes what he's going through, and I'm like, wow, maybe a lot of this stuff that we was going through was just unfounded and not fair. You know what I mean? And just the basis of narrative building against them. And so I think that, like, as you experience life more, you see things from a little bit of a different lens.
Good. Yeah. So you met him already?
I have multiple times, and he's been very charismatic. Look, when I'll tell you two stories. I think I've told one of them. I'm not sure I told the other one. When I was going to run, I talked to him. And he said, you know what, I'm hearing that you're thinking about running. And he goes, I think it's a great idea. And he said, you know, I want you to enjoy it. You know, enjoy the ride. And he goes, just keep it positive. I said, you know, look, Mr. President, that's who I am. That's the kind of person that I am. I'm not going to get negative because some campaign consultant tells me to. You know what I mean? I'm going to do what I think is right. I have a positive vision for the country. I have a message, and I have a voice, and I want people to hear my voice. And he was like, I think it's great.
Awesome.
And when I dropped out of the race, he was the first person that called me.
That's literally how he is. He's that type of person.
And frankly, he wanted my endorsement right then and there.
Yeah.
And he, you know, and so that was very special insofar as, you know, this is the guy who's leading.
Yeah,
and it wasn't all these other people that it could have been my first call that needed my endorsement arguably more than he needed my endorsement, and yet he was the first person to call me. So I think it showed a sense of humility on his part. It showed a sense that he values me and my endorsement. So I thought that was humbling for me as somebody who's a former president of the United States. And it really, and you want to feel when someone, you know, when you're in public service, you want to feel wanted in terms of like and appreciated, and I felt that way with him.
Do you think we'll see you with him maybe during the campaign trail?
I would like to.
Some events?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I've offered myself.
Yeah.
I think that there are three populations that are critical to winning the presidency that Democrats typically do well in. I think it's urban voters, right? Cities, where that's why a lot of mayors are Democrat. Hispanics, right?
Biggest, largest minority now.
20% of the country.
Right.
We have a massive opportunity. I think Hispanics are much more conservative than
Culturally conservative, absolutely.
Than people give them credit for. And I think you have young people like us.
Yeah,
I still consider
absolutely.
myself a young person.
You are.
But I mean, I think you know, young voters. We lost young voters to Biden by 26 points. That should never happen.
Right.
You know, and obviously he's trying to buy those votes by giving them, you know, by
the student loan forgiveness and all
that. And that's unfortunate because, you know, it's a bad policy, and not only that, we can't afford it.
Right.
You know what I mean, as a country. And so it's sad that he would stoop to that level.
Yeah.
But, you know, unfortunately, politics has gotten to some really bad places. Yeah.
I think we'll be fine. There's a lot of young voters, especially on TikTok, that really like President Trump.
You're starting to see it.
Yeah.
You're starting to see it. Even when and you know what he's doing? First of all, he has a great campaign team.
Yeah.
Best he's ever had. And he's showing up at places unexpected. Like
yes,
he was the
bodega.
That
was such good optics for him.
No, I mean, it was just a smart, and you could tell he's enjoying it. Yeah. He's like, it's genuine.
That's how he is. Yeah. During his administration back in 2017, there was a national, what do you call it, opportunity zones, which were an initiative, private, public sector come together.
Yep.
Miami was one of the cities that was chosen to get this money or incentive. I wanted to ask you about that because we've seen a lot of growth in the city. We've seen impoverished areas like Little Haiti, Little River completely transformed.
And Overtown,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. And
it's a great policy, and basically it's meant to create incentives for people to invest in underserved areas. And so I think that what's beautiful about the Republican perspective versus the Democrat is Democrats always just want to spend your money.
Yes.
Right? And Republicans are saying, no, we're going to give you incentives. So it's a carrot instead of a stick approach.
Yeah.
Another great one is in rent. The Democrats want to do rent control, right? Which is good in the short run, but bad in the long run, because what happens is you can't capitalize the expenses of a building to get the building rehabilitated. So then you end up having to evacuate the building and you lose all that housing. And then you don't get new stock, right? Because no bank will lend if they can't get a return on their capital. So it's one of these things with Democrats, they want to feel good.
Right.
Republicans want to do good. Right? It's a totally different concept. And I think the opportunity zones where you get tax deferrals and capital gains deferrals, or if not a capital gain, you don't have to pay capital gain if you hold for 10 years.
Incentivizing developers to
by not having to pay taxes, right? It has the same economic impact, but instead you're not using the government, you're not taking the money from people and then redistributing it. You're saying, hey, if you invest here, we're going to give you a tax break, which is what government should do. Less taxes, right? Less government involvement. And then it targets areas where there are critical needs. And so we've seen, look, we grew 14% last year in Miami, 12% the year before. I lowered taxes to the lowest level in history, so we've never had a lower tax rate.
But that's why all these companies want to move here.
There you go.
Right?
That's so 2 + 2 is 4.
Exactly.
Pretty simple.
What are some of the places that have been impacted or have grown because of the opportunity zones?
Well, you have Overtown, like you said. You have Little Haiti, Little River. You have
Little Havana, I think, a little bit too, right?
Has some of the opportunity zones. So yeah, I mean, I think all the areas that have opportunity zones have grown significantly.
Yeah, no, that's what I tell people, because a lot of people didn't know about that. So I had a discussion about it on a podcast, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I said,
"You should put up the maps too. Like you could see that there's actually maps in their areas, and you can track that.
That was, I think, one of my favorite policies from Trump, especially with all the accusations of him being a racist and whatnot, and these things really affect especially minority communities.
Absolutely.
You've been attacked lately by the media. It's, I've seen it. I think it's, horrible. It's usually the partisan media, a lot of liberals. What's going on with that? Have you spoken to them?
I listen, I've always had a good relationship with the press, and I've always been very transparent.
Yeah.
When I saw certain things that started happening about a year ago, where a specific reporter was attacking me viciously in ways that were not supported by the facts, I got very concerned. And, you lose trust.
Right.
And you realize why people have lost so much trust in the press.
Why Trump says that they're the fake news media. A lot of people thought he was crazy, but the more we see, especially attacking people like you who have done a great job in the city, they never highlight what you do, which is insane.
That's part of it. And then the other part is like, what's the real issue here, right? Like, what's going on? And then I've seen reports that document this particular reporter's past, their affiliations.
We exposed some of that. I exposed some of that myself with socialist past, and it just doesn't work in our community. It's not simple.
And you sort of put it all together, right? You go, okay, this person's radicalized. They're taking facts that do not lead to the conclusions that they are making, right? And we've been very blessed. People have weaponized those articles against me, members of the party that I do not belong to, right?
Of course,
and so
naturally.
they put him in as ethics complaints, and thankfully, the ethics commissions have reviewed everything and come to the conclusion that nothing was done wrong. But you have to go through that suffering as a family. You obviously
it's a lot of character assassination. That's really what it is.
And you lose economic opportunities. You lose standing in the community, because some percentage of people will believe some of this stuff.
Right.
And I think, look, we live in a world where it's more important than ever for us to have freedom of speech. But I also think we need to have accountability.
Yes.
Right? And that's the problem is,
for the press.
Maybe it doesn't concern people in the general public if my reputation gets destroyed, but it concerns me. It concerns my family. I have 2 young children. They have to read it.
But also your constituents. I'm part of your constituents, 100%. And I want to know the truth about the mayor, whether it's you, whether it's Levine Cava.
And listen, I've been blessed. I've had a 15-year career. I've been a working public official my entire time. I've been blessed because this community has given me great opportunities to find private sector success. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
And I do it without navigating, potential conflicts to the best of my ability at all times. You know what I mean? And that's something that I've never had any issues. And all of a sudden a year, I decide to run for president, and all these things start to materialize.
So I feel like it's a political hit job against you, and it happened. President Trump, even DeSantis and others, and it's unfortunate because a lot of times it's people behind the scenes with agendas, and the general public doesn't know that.
A reporter for NPR that wrote an incredible article, very brave, who basically talked about 3 examples of how the press has specifically buried certain stories and not apologized after they've gotten them wrong, from the Russia collusion story to the Hunter Biden laptop to COVID, which got hyper political. And he lays out how in all 3 instances that the conventional narrative from the corporate media was that the Hunter laptop wasn't real, or that the Russia
Vladimir Putin
or Russia collusion was real, right, with Trump, or the COVID issue, and once those things were disproven or proven, they never apologized for it, and so
because there's no accountability. That's the problem.
No.
All right, Mayor Suarez, is there any advice that you would give to young people that want to get involved in politics, public policy, or anything like that? Because I do get a lot of questions myself, but I want to obviously hear from you as a public official.
My advice is don't be discouraged. Obviously, the situation looks pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But for our democracy to thrive, we need to use your word, right?
Yes.
To thrive, we need good people. And so if everyone says, things are terrible, or there's so much division, and these unfair things happen in the press, and so I don't, the character assassination, so I don't want to be a part of it, then unfortunately they win, right? And unfortunately, the press will have created a situation which is exactly the opposite of what they're trying to create, which is they'll get bad people running only in politics. And so we need good people. I would tell them
fighters.
We need fighters, and we need people that believe in the ideals of this country, like freedom, democracy, integrity, and are willing to make some sort of personal sacrifices to participate in the process.
Yeah, I feel like you're a pretty open, mayor, pretty approachable,
I try to be,
pretty cool, and I'm so grateful and thankful that we were able to sit down and finally do this.
It's great to meet you.
And I hope we do it again.
Let's do it anytime.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you.
Thank you.